Every day, we wake up with the same brain, but we don't have to end the day with the same one. The truth is, your brain is a changeable machine. It can evolve, reshape, and optimize, but only if you know how to focus. And when we talk about focus, we're not talking about forcing yourself to sit still or stare at a book. We're talking about a biological force, one that rewires neurons, sharpens memory, and unlocks potential. Let's talk about 5 signs of the right focus style, backed by neuroscience, and inspired by the teachings of Dr. Andrew Huberman. Focus is not just a mental skill, it is a biological mechanism deeply embedded in how the brain changes. In neuroscience, the concept of neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience and attention. But neuroplasticity is not something that simply happens automatically. It is triggered by specific states of mind and body, and among the most important is the state of focused attention. When someone is deeply focused, they enter a unique neurobiological condition that allows the brain to encode information, strengthen connections between neurons, and even build new ones. This is not just a philosophical idea, it is measurable, scientific reality. To focus is to tell the brain, this matters. That single message, communicated through the act of intense attention, activates neuromodulators in the brain, especially acetylcholine and norepinephrine. These chemicals serve a critical role. They mark certain synapses, or connections between neurons, as important. Once those synapses are tagged, the brain is far more likely to return to them later, reinforcing them and making the pathway stronger. It's a little like highlighting key lines in a book. Those parts are easier to find, reread, and remember. In the same way, focus highlights the specific neural circuits you want to build. There's also a temporal dimension to this. When you focus, your brain doesn't immediately lock in and change. It starts a process. The actual rewiring happens later, usually during sleep or periods of rest, but it only happens because you first engaged in focused effort. If you go through the motions of learning or practicing something without true attention, the brain sees it as noise and filters it out. In contrast, when you concentrate, the brain knows, this is signal, not noise. This is something we should store, something that should shape the brain's architecture. What's fascinating is that focus is not just about the mind, it begins in the body, particularly through the visual system. The eyes aren't just passive windows to the world, they are active parts of the brain. When you deliberately focus your eyes on a specific point, like the words on a page, the steps in a workout, or the details of a presentation, you trigger a cascade of neural events that align the brain for learning. The pupils constrict slightly, breathing changes, heart rate slows down, and the brain enters a more alert, attentive state. This physiological response is what allows for the deep encoding of new information. It's not metaphorical, it's mechanical. There is also a crucial psychological element. Focus is not easy. It requires discipline, intention, and sometimes even discomfort. The brain does not change under conditions of ease. Neuroplasticity is strongest when there is what researchers call cognitive strain, that feeling of effort when you're pushing just beyond your current capacity. It's the moment in a math problem when you're confused but trying, the instant in a workout when your muscles shake, the pause in a difficult conversation when you're choosing to stay engaged. That strain is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something is working. It's the very condition the brain needs to initiate change. And yet, our world is full of distractions. The average person checks their phone dozens of times a day. They scroll, swipe, and split their attention constantly. This kind of fractured focus makes it nearly impossible to engage the neurochemical systems required for learning and adaptation. It's not that the brain is broken. It's that it's responding to what it's being trained to do, shift quickly, react often, and never go deep. To reverse this, and to truly change the brain, one must reclaim focus as a daily practice. That practice doesn't need to be long. Even 30 to 90 minutes of deep, undistracted focus a day can have a profound effect. The key is that the focus must be intentional, effortful, and supported by the right biological environment, proper sleep, hydration, light exposure, and breaks. When you get this combination right, the brain becomes more plastic. It learns faster, remembers more, and functions better. And over time, that adds up not just to new skills or knowledge, but to a new self. Focus, then, is the gateway. It is the first step toward change. You don't need more hours in the day, you need more moments of real attention. Because where attention goes, brain change follows. And where the brain changes, life changes. When we speak about focus, most people assume it's purely a mental phenomenon, something that happens inside the brain. But biologically, focus starts with the eyes. The visual system is not separate from the brain, it's part of it. In fact, the retina, located at the back of the eyes, is actually brain tissue. It's the only part of the brain exposed to the outside world. This means how you use your eyes can literally change your brain's internal state. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of focus and attention, and it's something deeply rooted in how our nervous system evolved. The human brain is wired to interpret the world through vision first. When we are in a relaxed state, like when walking through a park or scrolling on a phone, our eyes tend to move around freely, and we engage in panoramic vision. This kind of broad, unfocused gaze puts the brain in a low alert state. It's good for creativity, daydreaming, and rest. But it's not the state you want when trying to learn, change, or concentrate deeply. To enter a focused state, one of the fastest and most effective ways is to shift to what's called convergent visual focus. In simple terms, this means fixing your gaze on a single point. When you deliberately focus your eyes on a specific location or object, you initiate a cascade of physiological changes. Your pupils adjust, your breathing rate alters, and your level of internal arousal increases. The brain shifts from a relaxed, diffuse mode to a highly alert, concentrated one. This is not about willpower, it's about activating a different neurological mode by controlling your vision. There is a direct pathway between the visual system and the areas of the brain responsible for alertness and attention, such as the locus coeruleus and the basal forebrain. When your eyes lock onto something, those areas release neuromodulators like norepinephrine and acetylcholine. These chemicals sharpen your mental processing, increase signal-to-noise ratio in the brain, and make it more likely that what you're paying attention to will be remembered and stored. In other words, vision controls focus, and focus controls learning. This connection between the eyes and the brain's alertness systems is especially powerful because it's under your conscious control. You might not be able to instantly control your thoughts or emotions, but you can control where you place your gaze. And that simple act can shift your brain into a completely different gear. You become more alert, more ready to encode information, and more biologically prepared to change. It's important to understand that this is not just a hack or trick. This is how the nervous system has always worked. In a survival context, when humans needed to find food, spot danger, or hunt, their eyes would lock onto targets. That narrow focus would trigger a state of heightened awareness and readiness. The same circuits still exist today, and we can engage them deliberately to enhance our ability to focus in modern tasks like studying, problem-solving, or creative work. But there's a cost. This kind of narrow focus can only be maintained for limited periods of time. The brain and visual system can't stay locked in indefinitely. This is why most people find that their concentration wanes after about 45 to 90 minutes. That's not failure, that's biology. The brain needs rest intervals to reset, and the eyes play a role here too. After a period of intense focus, allowing the eyes to relax and return to panoramic vision helps downregulate the arousal system. This cycle, focus through visual locking, followed by release through visual relaxation, is how the brain maintains balance. There's another layer here as well, fatigue. When people overuse their focus systems without breaks, the neuromodulators that support focus get depleted. You might feel mentally foggy, irritable, or unable to concentrate even when you want to. That's a sign your system needs recovery. Again, this starts with the eyes. Stepping away from screens, looking at distant objects, and giving your visual system a break can help restore balance faster than just sitting and thinking harder. So if you want to increase your ability to change your brain, whether that means learning a new skill, overcoming a habit, or building a new mindset, you must understand that focus is not purely mental. It begins in the body. It begins with how you use your eyes. By learning to control your visual attention, you can directly influence the biological systems that govern your capacity to focus, learn, and transform. It's not about staring harder, it's about using your vision wisely. That's where true focus begins.